We're working on getting Suzanne up on the panel and then trying to get a hold of Bob. Hi, Suzanne.
Hi, Suzanne.
Hi there.
Hey, Suzanne.
So now we're waiting on Bob.
Deborah, do you still need me to log out?
Oh, you're good. Thank you.
Well, let's wait till 5:35, and if Bob can't come on by then, we'll begin. So 2 more minutes. Suzanne. Okay, we're going to begin. Hope that Bob can join us soon. This is the October 27th, 2020 meeting of the regular meeting of the Ventura Water Commission. Deborah, would you call the roll, please?
Jim Ackerman,
Here.
Nova Kleit,
Here.
Gerhard Hubner is absent. Suzanne McComb. Suzanne McComb.
She was on.
You're on mute, Suzanne.
She was on and
I'm here.
there she is. Okay. Bob McCord. We'll mark him absent for now. Susan Mulligan.
Here.
Grant Burton.
Here. So we have a quorum. Jim Ackerman, I'm sorry I wasn't present during the last meeting to welcome you to the commission, so I do that now. I wonder if you would take a couple of minutes and give us some idea of your background and so forth, so we get to know you a little bit.
Okay. I moved to Ventura in 1973 to become a firefighter. I attended Ventura College, and shortly after that, I started working part-time for Ventura County Fire Department. I worked a total of 39 years and worked most of the ranks of the department to the position of battalion chief. I was on an incident management team for about 15 years where I basically roamed the western half of the United States, and we would manage large incidents of all risk, meaning jumbo jet crashes, wildland fires, water rescue, whatever. We basically did it all. The last 8 years I've been retired. I left the job to have both my hips replaced, and I had some issues with my lower back, so I was no longer a viable candidate for work. So I got interested in a couple of nonprofits that I volunteer with. One is a Walk on Water. The other one is Young Brave Foundation. And I started getting the water recycle product down at the treatment facility, water waste, and started using that in my yard. And I got to talking with people and became very interested in water and what was going on in the water world. Craig Jones became a pretty good friend, and he recommended that I apply for this position. Literally, I'm a fish out of water when I start with you folks and some of the information that you have, because I don't come from that industry, but I did work in hazardous materials for quite some time during my career, and we did basically familiarizations and pre-planning of water treatment facilities, working with chlorine, stuff like that. So basically, I was a firefighter my whole life, and mostly what I did was use the water that you would procure, and we tried to use it. So, other than that, I'm grateful to be part of the organization. I'm trying to learn as quickly as I can, but I'm enjoying it very much.
Thank you, Jim. I know the rest of the commissioners join me in welcoming you again. Let's go to item 1, the minutes. Has everyone reviewed the minutes, and do you have any questions or comments, additions or deletions?
Actually, am I supposed to give a special presentation?
Not just yet. That's the next thing,
Oh,
I think. Oh, you know what? You're right. Let's do the special presentation. Sorry, Deborah.
okay. It's only a few minutes. I just wanted to announce that we will be changing the format of the meetings. It will no longer be WebEx. They're going to be changing to Zoom. And we're hoping by the next Water Commission meeting in November that it'll be on the new format. If not, it'll be in December. So if you have any questions or need help on the Zoom format, please let us know.
Well, I second that motion. I'm looking forward to that. I think Zoom is much more robust and will be easy for the rest of the commissioners that I to work with. So that's great. That's good news. Now the minutes. Any questions, comments, additions, deletions? And if not, we'll hear a motion.
So move.
Second, please call the roll.
Jim Ackerman,
Approved.
Nova Kite,
Yes.
Suzanne McCombs, Suzanne, Susan Milligan,
Yes.
Grant Burton,
Yes.
and I'm sorry, was that you, Suzanne?
Deborah, looks like Commissioner McCord is now on.
Miles, I couldn't understand you.
Oh, I was just saying it looks like Commissioner McCord has now joined the meeting.
Outstanding. Hey, Bob. Okay, was that enough of a vote?
Yes, it's 4 approvals.
Okay, we're going to go slightly out of order. We're going to take item 4 first. That's communications and outreach for water and wastewater. So maybe, Susan, did you want to introduce this?
Sure. Haley Matsukawa is going to be on here and giving us a presentation on our rates, outreach, and engagement. So go ahead, Haley.
All right, good evening, Water Commission. My name is Haley Matsukawa. I am a management analyst with Ventura Water, And tonight I wanted to provide an update on our water and wastewater rate study communications and outreach efforts. It's been a little bit since we talked last. So early on, if you could go to the next slide, please. So early on the rate study, our Water Commission expressed an interest in pursuing a communications and outreach strategy that supported public input and two-way engagement. And so I'm here tonight to provide an update and some key findings from some survey results that we've conducted over the last couple of weeks. So the communications and outreach strategies has met the goals that are presented before you. And these include provide opportunity for two-way engagement and public input, a strategy that increases awareness and understanding of essential services that our water and wastewater rates support, and then also a strategy that encourages ratepayers to share their views, their values, and suggestions that they may have as they relate to our water and wastewater rates. Next slide. Okay. So tonight, I actually thought we would start with a video. This is the third video of a video series that was designed by Ventura Water to introduce our customers to water and wastewater systems, to describe the future and current challenges that we are facing in terms of our water and wastewater infrastructure. And the video series eventually goes into detailing all the different considerations and factors that go into setting our rates. So all of our outreach efforts have really been tailored to meet customers where they're at in terms of their understanding. So we've really worked to simplify some of this information so that it can be digested by the general public. And I think this video is a great example. It does a good job of introducing the challenges that Water Commission has to make as it works to achieve rates that both meet our future and current needs and rates that are affordable, fair, and equitable for our customers. So with that, we'll take just 2 minutes and preview this video. We're having trouble with the audio.
And Bob, we're going out of order on item 4.
Sorry, Grant, did you ask something?
I tell you, we're going out of order. We're taking item 4 first. Okay.
Ventura Water meets our core commitments: safety, reliability, customer service, and stewardship, in partnership with our community and ratepayers. In video 2, we highlighted the 6 assessment and planning steps used to arrive at investment decisions for our water and wastewater systems. In this video, we will build on this foundation. And adjusts rates to reflect critical capital improvement needs, inflation, cost of service adjustments, and more. The current plan identifies more than 50 projects necessary to achieve and maintain a safe and reliable water and wastewater service that meets regulation mandates and considers current and future needs. Ventura Water actively pursues state and federal funding support for these projects to offset costs to ratepayers. The Water Commission works closely with Ventura Water staff and City Council to evaluate the right balance between projects that support infrastructure repairs, regulatory requirements, water quality improvements, water supply needs, and emergency preparedness with financial stability, affordability, and equity. This is a challenging task that requires careful consideration and input from our ratepayers. Ventura Water works closely with financial experts to balance many factors and develop a rate structure that allows for necessary upgrades and investments and is fair and equitable for our customers. To ensure water rates remain fair and equitable, Ventura Water supports a tiered rate structure where the more water used, the higher the cost per unit of water. The lowest tier is structured to support the absolute essential water needs, such as taking a shower or doing the dishes. Ventura Water strives to keep this tier affordable for all customers. Highest tier typically encompasses water going way beyond essential needs. This tier comes at a higher price to customers. We currently have 4 water tiers that are being reviewed in the ongoing rate structure decision-making. Ventura
Could Bob McCord please mute?
Water embraces transparency and supports input from the community.
We cannot mute Bob. Unfortunately, it affects our sound for some reason. So for now, he needs to remain the way he is. Apologies.
To share your water values and informal polling on water and wastewater rate decisions.
Okay, I apologize. That wasn't the easiest to hear, but at the end of the meeting, I do encourage you guys to visit our rate engagement page and view the video. This is just one example of some of the tools we're using to engage customers on this rate study. And so here you'll see all the different various tools we're using to communicate with our customers. And one of the ones that I want to highlight tonight is a new engagement page that was set up. I believe our Water Commission received an email about it a number of weeks ago. So we launched a new engagement page, and this was really designed to be a hub for all of our customers to come to learn about the rate study. It has information, educational video series, information on our key projects, such as the State Water Project and Ventura Water Pure. It includes a number of frequently asked questions and answers. There's areas for customers to submit their questions and concerns. And then additionally, links to our Water Commission meetings and other public meetings, upcoming public meetings. So the page launched 2 weeks ago, and it's since been shared with our media contacts, with our community council leaders, city council, our Chamber of Commerce, and other stakeholders. Additionally, the page has been featured, highly featured on the City of Ventura and Ventura Water social media platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and then a number of newsletters since. So if you have not had a chance, I do encourage you to spend a little bit of time on this page. You'll get an opportunity to read some of our community's input and see the way that we're laying out information for our community on the rate study. And again, the website is venturawaterrates.net. All right, next slide, please. So one of the key features of the engagement page is that it's able to support this two-way communications that we discussed earlier as one of our goals. So on the engagement page, customers are able to take a 10-question series. They're able to share their ideas on what we're calling an idea board, which I'll show you in just a minute. And then they're able to engage with us, obviously, in our public meetings in this setting as well. So to date, the site's been visited over 4,000 times. We've received 70 survey results and 30 comments on our shared idea board. And with that, I'm going to share some brief results and trends that we're hearing from our customers. Next slide, please. So this is a view of the idea board. And this is where customers can come in and they can submit their comments. And then there's also an opportunity for Ventura Water to respond to questions that might be posed, misunderstandings, or opportunities for us to provide some clarity on an issue. And we utilize this feature to receive input from our residents on what types of projects they would like to see their water and wastewater rates support. And so you can see some of the options there at the top. The idea is that customers select one of these categories, or they can select multiple categories, and then they're able to offer some thoughts and opinions. And like I said, if you haven't had an opportunity, these are all able to view by the public. And so what we've seen on this slide, one more click, I believe. Perfect. By far, future water supply was the #1 concern or value of our community. And they offered a lot of feedback as it relates to solutions that they propose for future water supply, maybe some criticism of some of our existing projects, or support for some of the water supply projects that are being pursued. Secondly was water quality. There was a number of comments commenting on water quality, primarily in regards to the water quality in East Ventura. And then third was this desire for infrastructure improvement. And if you go ahead and go to the next slide. One more click. You can go ahead and click through these. So the number one comment that we got was relating to water supply and new development projects going on in the city of Ventura. A lot of customers concerned about our water supply and how new developments are impacting those resources. Secondly, like I said, we got a lot of comments on people's thoughts in terms of different water supply solutions, whether it was Ventura Water Pure, State Water, or a lot of comments on desalination and some inquiries of why that's not a solution that's being pursued by the city right now. Thirdly, water quality on East Ventura. That was more of just a comment or complaint regarding the hard water in East Ventura. And then lastly, just concerns that water infrastructure, water and wastewater infrastructure has not been improved or maintained over the years, and the burden on our existing ratepayers at this time. So those were 4 common things, takeaways from the idea board. It was a really good discussion, I think. We were really happy with the results. People did address the question that they were posed and provided a lot of good insight for us. Next slide. All right. So the second key feature of this engagement page was a 10-question survey. And this was a challenge, obviously, to get some good input. You need to have your survey short and your questions clear and concise. And so I'm going to be sharing some key findings that we found from our survey. We asked residents to view some of our videos, get a general understanding, and then respond to the short survey. Next slide, please. So on this question, participants were asked to rank which of the following priorities of these projects from most to least important. And you can see the results kind of balanced out, but at the end, what we can draw from this question is that by far, water quality and water supply continue to be top concerns for our customers. Next slide. Okay, so on this question, participants were asked to respond to the question, over the last 10 years, Ventura ratepayers have only seen a modest increase in rates, with rates less than those of our neighboring cities. How much do you agree with the following statement? Now is the time for us to invest in our water and wastewater future. So in this response, 64% of our respondees agreed or somewhat agreed that now is the time to invest in our water and wastewater future. Next slide. Okay, so then we started to get a little bit more detailed and we wanted to hear customers' reaction to a tiered structure in terms of if they felt like this is a structure that is fair. So we're looking at water structures at this time. So we provide a simple description of what a tiered water structure looks like, and 50% of our respondents indicated that they felt a tiered structure is fair. And then this question also came with an open field for customers to provide some input of how tiered structures can be improved. So we got a lot of feedback there, which I'll just run through really quickly. Overall, customers felt like family size wasn't being taken into account on the tiered structure. They felt like large users got a break from the tiered structure. Some comments on the fact that tier 1 or your lowest tier wasn't wide enough to allow for different family sizes. A few comments regarding the COVID-19 pandemic and the fact that more families are going to be using water indoors than normal, and that we should consider that in our rate study. A few comments regarding actually wastewater here, and a few comments that we should move away, or they would like to see the city move away from a seasonal determination period and look at water usage from a monthly or quarterly standpoint. And then there was a few suggestions on sub-metering and how sub-metering can improve equity and fairness in our rate structures for some of our residents that aren't metered or might be a part of a multi-unit commercial building. And then there was a few comments regarding business and agriculture and some kind of notion that these businesses or industries benefit from this tiered structure rather than just residential customers. So variety, all kinds of good feedback, but those were some actually major trends that we saw and some common themes within this question. Next slide, please. Okay, so next we wanted to hear customers' reaction to drought rates or water shortage rates. So we asked customers to offer their thoughts of the idea of drought rates being applied during a season of water shortage. 42 indicated that they felt that drought rates were fair. And again, we received a lot of open-ended comments in regards to this question. Some main themes were that customers felt that drought rates were punitive, that they were being penalized, regardless if they were reducing their water usage. A couple comments on the value of education and how they would like to see more education in terms of water conservation and encouraging that in our community. And then a few comments over the frustration that drought rates have been in place for such an extended period of time in the city of Ventura that they almost don't seem like a charge that's been applied for outstanding circumstances. So a few that offered their advice that they did feel that drought rates are fair, should they only be applied during times of water shortage. Next slide. Okay, so those were some of our major findings from the idea board and our short survey. Some of you might have remembered back in March, we did have FM3 Research do a detailed survey of our community focusing on Ventura Water and Ventura Water Pier. And this is just really an informal survey, an opportunity for the community to provide their input. And I hope that some of this insight might be helpful for our Water Commission as they move forward in the rate study. I know it's helpful from a communication standpoint for Ventura Water staff so that we can see what are the areas that customers have misunderstandings, where can we provide more clarity and guidance to clear up some of these common questions, concerns that we're getting. So I wanted to share a little bit on what's next. Obviously, our Water Commission is familiar with the timeline for the rate study, but in terms of outreach and engagement, what to expect. So we will continue to promote this engagement page. We'll make updates to this page regularly as our Water Commission makes decisions on the rate study. We will continue to share information both in the City of Ventura's newsletter and the City of Ventura's newsletter and social media platforms. This page will be live throughout the entirety of the rate study, and we will always have opportunity for engagement. I will be working next week to start responding to some of the questions and inquiries we get. So that will be a little bit of a timely process, but I do hope to get back to customers on their specific questions. And then in a minute, I'll talk about some upcoming public meetings. So we've really engaged customers on a digital platform, and next month, our leadership will be going to present to our community councils, our chamber, and we'll be going on tour a little bit using our videos and some of the information that's been showcased on this page in presentation form. And then additionally, starting in a few weeks, we will have a bill insert going out to customers. So those customers that might not engage with us on a digital platform as much, that rely on some print to receive their news and updates, all of our customers will be getting a bill insert with their water bill that will notify them of where to receive more information on the rate study should they want to participate and provide input. I think that's it. Next slide. Okay, so here's just a quick preview of some of those upcoming public meetings. We'll be visiting with the Westside Community Council next week, and then following, we'll be meeting with the former community council meetings. We encourage our Water Commission to participate in those meetings. And I did want to highlight for everyone that responded to our survey or the idea wall on the engagement page, we encourage them to attend this Water Commission meeting, and we will continue to advertise the Water Commission meeting so that we can get some good participation in these discussions as well. So with that, again, it's VenturaWaterRates.net. I encourage our Water Commission to spend some time on that page if you haven't already. And with that, I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Haley. You know what I think I'm going to do, commissioners, is call you by name and ask you if you have a comment rather than free for all. So like that's how the city council does it, by the way. So Suzanne, do you have anything?
No, thank you.
Bob?
I just, I really do appreciate the survey and the effort. I would hope though that in some of the questions, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
In some of the questions that we not try to inject opinions in the question, like number 4. You know, you make the statement, Ventura ratepayers have seen only modest increases in rates. Well, okay, that's an opinion. So it's kind of a push-pull question, and my only suggestion is that I'm not sure that elicits really a forthright response from the ratepayers. That's it.
That's a good point. Nova?
Yes, I have spent a little time on the website. I think it's good and I appreciate the effort. Just in response to Bob, there is a graph shown that shows our Ventura water rates as compared to other communities. So it is put in that context. So our rates are moderate in that context. So there was some context. It isn't just an opinion. It is in fact a fact. So that's my opinion on that.
Thank you, Nova.
I'm curious about there is a growing sentiment that I've seen online, particularly on Nextdoor, about the development that's going on, the building of residences in the downtown area. There seems to be a growing sentiment against building and a desire to keep Ventura and all of that. I don't really have an opinion on that, but I do see that there's a conflation of all of this development and all of this building with increased water rates, and I am a bit concerned about that. That's not the impression I have from the meetings I've been attending on, with the commission and the information that I've reviewed. And so I'm just curious, how is the city, how's the water department addressing that particular question or that concern that why should we pay more water? Because we're opposed to this building up of the downtown, and it's just going to mean more water rates or higher water rates. I think the rate increases are much more complex than just that one issue, but that is the thread I'm seeing more and more on Nextdoor in particular. So just wondering how you're responding to that.
Commissioner Burton, do you want me to take a stab at that?
I could too, but why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, so this is actually one of the main questions that people had is why do we keep building when we have a shortage of water supply? So we actually there's an FAQs that are on the site. I think they're on the website now. Maybe Haley, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that is one of the questions that we have on the website, I believe, today.
And didn't those developments have to pay the net zero fee, Susan?
Some of them did, but the response, the answer to that is basically, there is housing required by the state of California. So we go through the details of explaining why, and maybe that's something we can look into is if we see people asking that question, we can refer them to the answer on our website. So that's good information, good feedback, Nova. I appreciate it.
Yes, Susan, to your statement, there is an FAQ on the website that addresses that issue. And Commissioner Clay, I would agree that was the top concern that we also heard on our engagement site. And I anticipate that will also be a question that we'll face as we go out into the community councils. So we'll be prepared to speak to that topic.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Hey, Jim, do you have anything?
Yeah, I just reviewed that information on the website. I thought it was great information. I actually forwarded to several of my friends that are water rate increase disapproval. So I think I got the word out a little bit, but I think it was very well done.
Thank you. Susan Milligan.
I agree with the other commissioners. I thought it was very well done. You hit the key issues and questions in a way that's easy to understand. And reading it I tried to read it as a customer, and I felt good thinking that you were interested in my thoughts on things, and the questions got me thinking about some things. So I think it's a great way to communicate about the rates.
Great. And I echo all that, Haley. Good job so far, so good. And I appreciate you your presentations tonight. Anything else from anybody? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Okay. Thank you, Haley. Now we're going to go to item 2, adopted 2002 to 2026 capital improvement plan and wastewater projects update. And Susan, if you could introduce this.
Sure. Ron Herbst, who's our principal engineer for Ventura Water, is going to make the presentation, and Phil Nelson from our Public Works Director is also on the line if there's questions. So Ron, do you want to go ahead?
Okay, Ron.
Sure, thank you. All right, so this presentation is really going to have 2 parts. First, I'm going to go over some recently completed projects, which is really just sharing some photos and talking a little bit about what we're seeing. The second part will really be talking about what I'm calling the modified CIP plan for coordination with the 2020 rate study. So we've made modifications to what council approved. What was that, last March or April? So there's some changes. For the most part, nothing huge, but I'll get to that in the second part. Next slide, please. So this is just a list of the projects of the photos you're about to see. The Public Works Construction Department does manage all of these. They sent me many of the photos. I know a lot about some of the projects, but at least some about the rest of them. I think it was Commissioner McCord sent a question about what the costs were for each of these, the actual costs. We are working on tracking that down with Public Works, but we don't have that quite yet. Next slide, please. Our first photo here is from the Pierpont Lanes water replacement project. This photo on the left is just them installing out in the sand. The problem was that the pipes that were quite old were ductile iron, were exposed to the moisture and all the sand out there, and were not in good shape and not holding up well. And they had actually been shut off for some time. They were valved off. And that is not really the ideal situation with dead ends. So we've gone in, and 2 lanes have been completed. There's a 3rd lane yet to be done. This had to be bid separately due to a change order issue that Phil can talk about if there's questions on that when he gets up. Next slide, please. This next slide, many of you who might drive on Harbor will remember this construction project that took quite some time. Here's a good example of why, especially the photo on the left. It's a really, really deep sewer. It's 36-inch diameter, and it's 20+ feet deep as it approaches the harbor, because it has to go under the Arundel Barranca. Photo on the right is just another photo where it's also deep, but not quite as bad as the one on the left. Next slide, please. Now, I think the commission might have seen photos on this last year, but I did want to show it again because I did track down, thanks again, Public Works, for providing the drone photo that was not shown. I thought it's an interesting shot. That's the new tank on the left, and then the tank that's being demolished that's sort of the reddish color to the right of it. And then the picture on the right is them pouring the ring foundation for the tank. Next photo, please. Or slide. This project was recently done. This is Seaward and Polite Booster Pump. It's right over by the high school, by Ventura High. And a little kind of, there's a little wedge-shaped park. It's right next to that. This was already in the CIP as of several years ago, but this project had to be accelerated because there was a auto collision where a car actually hit the water control center. It didn't demolish it, but it put it in a precarious situation. So the project was accelerated and recently completed. The photo on the left is them pulling out the pump because they're going to rehab the pump can. And the photo on the right was the installation of a new proper vault for the meter. The old meter vault was way too small, and there's no way you could even get in there without just basically having to reach down in there in a hole and work upside down. So that situation is greatly improved. And the Water Control Center was actually relocated to be further away from where any car incident could happen again. Next slide, please. Okay, this is actually part of a much bigger project, the east to west project, one phase of that. And what we're doing here is installing a line stop, which is a pretty interesting process. You have an active pipeline, 24-inch pipeline, pretty high pressure, 120 PSI. And basically a plug is inserted down into the pipe so that the lower half could be dewatered and 2 new valves cut in. One of the other interesting parts of this is we do plan to reuse that pipe and sort of repurpose it. Right now, it's a 430 pipe that pumps water from 5 points from our 210 zone up to 430 zone. And we're going to reuse that pipe to move water in the opposite direction and convert it to a 330. So we will be removing about 40 PSI from it. And we saw some pieces of the pipe. It was really in remarkably good condition. And we're taking some pressure off of it. So reusing that is a big money saver for that project. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a project. There's actually like 3 slides on this project. That's because it's almost done. It's been a very long road going. It had a 600-day design schedule that was reduced to about 400 days. So we are saving some time there. And that was really with a lot of work between our operations folks and the contractor. And it's not an easy job. It's rehab work. There's always challenges. You always find unknown things. And you're not really quite sure how it's going to go. And we did hit some snags along the way, but for the most part, it has gone really well. Next slide, please. This photo on the left is an example, not a real exciting example of something that didn't go so smoothly. That's just a simple in-suction pump for mixing. And it was doing very funny things. We could not figure out what was wrong. Everyone was scratching their heads, especially me. And it turned out to actually be a faulty flow meter, something that as an engineer, you're used to trusting and relying on, but it was giving us just bad data that made no sense. And once that problem got solved, which took many weeks, things started moving right along. The photo on the right is the inside of the digester, obviously after it was thoroughly cleaned. And these new pipes that you can see were installed. There's mixing nozzles on the end. And next slide, please. I'll show a little video of inside. So, Deborah, there should be a little play. It's only 5 seconds.
Sorry, Ron, we cannot play the video.
Oh, well, that's disappointing. It was actually pretty exciting because they were torch cutting that large steel pipe that you can see is hanging from the domed roof. And just seeing the sparks fly and then, you know, when it hits the ground like fireworks. Anyways. That's what it looked like, and it was really nice being inside of that enclosed structure and hearing just the sound and the echoes, but maybe next time. Next slide, please. Wait, something's happening. All right. Wait, it started playing, Deborah. Okay, it's no big deal. We can just move on, sorry. Okay, this next project is Bickwell 1 abandonment. I'm not sure exactly how long ago, but some time ago, we transferred ownership of Vic Well 1. It wasn't producing water for us anymore to any significant degree, but it's right there by the government center. And the government center has, all that lawn and grass. So they actually took it over and they're going to use it for irrigation. But we still had some other facilities that needed to be properly abandoned. And we had a malfunctioning valve, a non-functioning valve is what I should say, to replace. So we replaced about 40 feet of 18-inch pipe, new valve. Picture on the left is them dewatering the pipe, the final bit of dewatering, where they're just sucking out the last bit of water from a hole that they cut in the top of the pipe, so they could get all the water out and then do the rest of the replacement. They were doing this at night, because it was right in Victoria and the number 1 lane going north. This was also very deep, 20 plus feet deep. The water line was so deep because it was put in before the 126 went in, and the overpass had a lot of fill. So our pipe ended up quite deep. Next slide, please. This project was out at Marina Park. This is part of the Ventura Water Pier and the ocean outfall component. This was, I do say complete, but all they completed was the geotechnical drilling. They drilled 3 holes out there to about 150 feet, just 4-inch diameter, pretty small hole, to develop the geotechnical profile so they can figure out how to install the outfall, which will be horizontal directionally drilled. And they've got to figure out the right spot for that pipe to be going through the various materials that they hit. Next slide. This project is also a drilling project, much, much bigger. This is Mandwell 3 drilling. It's a 20-inch hole. It's 800 feet deep. The drilling went quite smoothly as far as I know. The end product is the picture on the right, which there's not a whole heck of a lot to see, but right in the middle is a pipe sticking out of the ground about 18 inches or maybe 2 feet. And the enclosure project has been awarded and will probably get started in the next month or so. Next slide. Here's another real exciting photo. This is AMI. That's supposed to be kind of a joke. But that's actually the AMI meter in front of my house. I live midtown. That was put in about a year ago or a year and a half. This project's still not complete, but I wanted to give an update on it. It's about 80% complete and expecting full completion by the end of next year. Next slide, please. Okay, that was it for those stories. The next part of the presentation is also kind of a story, because I want to explain what we've done over the past few weeks about coordinating the capital improvement plan with the 2020 rate study. So it was October 6th at Water Commission that they received a presentation on the preliminary financial plan. And this is sort of a revision on that, or maybe not revision, refinement. So we honed in what we really wanted to recommend and what we felt met the needs of water infrastructure wise, and also met what staff could complete on a public works side, and also how that might impact the ratepayers. Next slide, please. The colors did not come through. Well, that's all right. So this is just a real simple slide, and this covers the whole 10-year period. This is not sort of the focus of what I'm talking about today. Is really the fiscal year ending 2022 to 2026, because that has actual project details. So this is just an overview for the 10-year time span. Next slide, please. Now here's a more detailed look at that 5-year smaller window. This is how water was broken down to each of those categories. one of the things the commission hopefully saw was the supplemental packet, which we added some more details about which projects actually fell into which category. And for the most part, that was straightforward. But some of them, it was kind of like, well, you could put it in one category or another, but we just went where we thought it fit best. And that information is part of that supplemental packet. So I won't read off all the titles. Next slide, please. This is a real similar slide where the colors did come through. Not quite as complex. There's really only 3 categories. And once again, the details for which projects were in which category are available in the supplemental packet. Sorry. Next slide, please. This is similar to the first black pie chart that we saw. It's not supposed to be black. I'm not sure what happened there, but anyways, this just covers the year 2022 to 2026. And just to look at how much money we're spending on each thing, either water or wastewater. All right, next slide. And I don't need Phil to talk yet, but is he on the line?
I am here, Ron.
Okay. Okay, excellent. Thank you. All right, so here's where we want to talk about how we matched it with staffing. So first thing we did is figure out what do we really need to get done. And not a bare bones idea, but what makes the most sense for Ventura Water and their infrastructure. And then we met and talked with Phil and his group to try to figure out how that could mesh together with his staffing capacity and make sure that we felt like we were telling a real story about what we could get done and how much we could accomplish without overpromising and then artificially increasing rates. That would be like not what we want to do at all. So you can see that it does say the next 5 years, but really what I'm talking about is fiscal year ending 2022 to 2026. That was a 123 million and some change, worked out to an average of close to 25. And as you can see, the next bullet on there talks about multiplying by 75% due to unanticipated changes. But it's really more than just our unanticipated delays. It's really more than just unanticipated delays. Other things happen. Sometimes there's scope changes. Like I mentioned, we're able to reuse the pipe for the east-west projects. That's saving a lot of money. So things like that happen. Another true fact is when the engineers are putting together the CIP estimates, you're going conservative. You want to make sure that project truly has enough to get it all done. And maybe there's a little bit left over at the end, 10% or something might be a number you think about. So then it ends up actually costing less than the CIP. So that 75% number is something we talked about with staff. It's a number that was used at the last rate study. Susan was kind enough to find an email from 2013 where it was discussed. And it's a number that really feels right to me. Having been a CIP engineer since day one, worked in consulting for 13 years. I've been at the city 9. I was over in Public Works for 7 of those. And the next bullet on here talks about this $18.5 million per year. That's a number that's about what we were targeting based on our conversations with Phil. And when you do see the rate study, which I haven't, that you might see a little bit differences in some of those numbers. That's because I have my footnote there that just says we didn't escalate that number. And why won't we escalate it? Well, this was all about staffing. So this was like current dollar current year dollars. So the escalation is not there. And then Phil, if you want to chime in, because I don't want to speak for you and say that Phil promised he could get this all done without him saying it himself, please chime in.
Thanks, Ron. No, we have looked at this really hard. As you know, we've formed a water team that is focused solely on Ventura water projects. It's approved for 4 positions. We currently have 3 filled, and it's working very well, I think. They are focused on the work. They're delivering the work. In order to meet the numbers that Ron talked about, we do need to fill that 4th position, but I feel very confident that we would be able to meet the 20 million that we're signing up for. And, along the way, we'll probably have to flex a bit and make some adjustments. We do have other engineers available, although we do have other CIP as well. But I'm not adverse to using them if need be, just depending on what all the relative priorities are for the city. But bottom line is, I feel good that we can do this. And I know our track record has not been great, but we've made, I think, enough changes and the right changes that allows me to say that.
All right. Thank you, Phil. All right. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to talk about the water adjustments. And this is adjustments from, the CIP that was approved by council back in March. So there is some differences, not huge ones. Like I say on the first bullet, a lot of it was just minor tweaks in schedule, like shifting it a year here or a year forward. We adjusted some projects. I think it was a little more than 50% or so. And there was a few larger changes that we made that I listed on the bullets underneath. I just wanted to point those out because they made the bigger difference. Everything else was pretty minor based on schedules and also updated cost projections. Levis Park Drive extension, that was removed from the CIP. It's really not a priority for Ventura Water. It's also completely dependent on building of that road. Also the levee to protect the potential developed land and the road itself. And I'm not personally sure when that might happen. So we did remove that from the CIP. The next thing we did, we added a project. We added Bailey Reservoir Rehabilitation. So it was recently, just a few months back, during some routine inspection, we noticed that we needed a more comprehensive condition assessment of Bailey Reservoir, especially given that's the destination for Ventura Water Pure Water. The Bailey was built in 2 construction segments. There's the older half, that's more than half. It has 2 compartments, and then the newer project, which I think was in the 80s, which is still appears to be in good shape. Does not need to be drained and cleaned and fully inspected. What we've done is we've added this detailed condition assessment to the master plans that were approved by council. I think that was just last week. So that will be coming. We're not sure exactly what the rehab requirement is going to be, but we did budget $1 million, hoping that it was just like lining the inside, but we're really not sure until we get in there and get a detailed look at it. Let's see.
Hey, Ron, can I comment on the Levis Park Drive extension?
Sure, go ahead.
It's not a priority project for Ventura Water in terms of system, but it may become a priority project for the city in terms of development. And I fully expect we will probably do that project within the next 3 years, but it's virtually designed. So the design team that I mentioned earlier, the 3-4 person design team, is focused on design. The design is pretty much complete for this project, and it's not been handled by the Ventura Water design team. We've done it with other engineers. So it would be primarily in construction, and we have flex capacity there using consultants and other items for other means for getting that work done. So I expect it's going to go in the next 3 years, but I don't see it really impacting Ventura Water.
Okay, okay, thank you for that input. All right. I think we're ready for the next slide. So Phil is probably going to want to repeat himself because that's listed here too. So just like for water, we made some minor adjustments. The list was a lot shorter. Not as many projects are listed in wastewater. So actually most of them received a minor tweak and schedule or an update on cost projections. One of the major changes was the Seaside Transfer Station relocation. We have pushed that out to beyond fiscal year 2026. It made sense rate-wise, schedule-wise. We still don't have a home for the relocation. Public Works, maybe even 2 years ago, had identified a good spot, but it involved working with Caltrans. Those negotiations failed. So we are going to try to find a new home for that pump station and move it off the beach, lift station, I should say. So that has been pushed out, and that was a major cost. I think that was, yeah, like 22 million. Olivas Park, same thing we just talked about, but take in Phil's remarks on that as well. For wastewater, it included recycled water line and sewer. So we'll see what happens there, but like Phil said, not a major impact to Ventura Water, not anticipated. We did add 3 projects at the wastewater plant. These are things that are needed. We talked with operations, our cogen, which takes, we saw some slides on the digesters. It takes essentially the methane from the digested sludge and produces electricity. And that thing is out of date and always broken. So that is priority 1. These are listed in order of priority. The secondary clarifier rehab, that was already listed as a future project, but we moved it up because it's in pretty rough shape. And we also added replacement of the weirs, which are stainless steel weirs that are at the top of the clarifier. That actually added about $1 million, just adding those weirs. And then we've got the anoxic tank capacity increase, and that was put out last priority for 2026. All right, next slide. So I wanted to talk about this because this is quite different than the last rate study, which included replacing a recommended like 3.8 miles of water lines and 3 miles of sewer lines. This rate study does not include something like that. It is getting deferred. That is not great, but we've had to prioritize our projects with other things that are just immediately needed. A good example that I did not mention, if we go back one slide to wastewater. So something that I did not mention was the tertiary filters project. So our existing filter system is pressure vessels. They are in very bad shape. They've had numerous emergency repairs. I think there was an emergency repair very recently, a second, or perhaps that's even the third or fourth one by council. I think that was 600,000. Susan, do you remember what that was?
I don't off the top of my head.
Okay, that's fine. Anyways, we have needed to accelerate that project, and we did move $19 million from future years, and by future years, I mean beyond 2026, into this 5-year plan that ends fiscal year 2026. So, okay, moving forward again now. Like I was saying, the previous rate study had us replacing several miles 3.8 and the 3 of the sewer. This is not based on that. This is based on meeting our immediate needs, not oversaying how much staff can get done engineering wise, and meeting our immediate goals for infrastructure. So sewer line, there's only one project. That's the Victoria area sewer line. It's 10,000 feet, so 2 miles or so. Sewer line that needs replacement. Water lines, we're showing 36,000 feet there. But what I do want to talk about, you can see the list of the 6 projects. It would be the one second to last from the bottom. It's listed at 25,000 linear feet, but that's not a one-to-one replacement at all. We're replacing, close to 5 miles of pipe. We're not replacing. We have close to 5 miles worth of pipe, active pipe. It's in very bad shape. It follows the bike path, which used to be the old railroad line, and there was problems during the Thomas fire, numerous repairs, and it only serves, I think, 7 or 8 customers and 2 or 3 fire hydrants. And we can probably get by with just adding about 2,000 lineal feet of pipe to hook up those fire hydrants and hook up those other customers from other water lines in the area. But what we are getting rid of is the 25,000 feet of very poor condition pipe. And with that, any questions?
Okay. Hold on one second, please. Okay, Suzanne, any questions?
Not so much a question, but a comment, and I realize Haley's not on anymore, but Susan, I would argue that this kind of information in terms of the breakdown in the various categories and the nature of the projects that are in our upcoming CIP are the kinds of information that ought to be on that rates engagement page from the standpoint of communicating to the citizens exactly what it is that we're doing. I think there is a common misperception that nothing's happening. And I think it's important to communicate to the residents how much we are trying to do. The only issue I would take, Ron, with the way you've categorized some of these things is when you call them upgrades, I think from the standpoint of, the average person who doesn't, pay attention to this very often, we need to clarify and be clear on what's an upgrade and what's just absolutely required in order to maintain operations with the current technology. Because my impression of what you're describing, for example, with regard to the tertiary filter replacement, is that's not really an upgrade. That's just absolutely necessary for our ongoing operations at the plant. So,
yeah, I can see your point there. Sometimes calling something an upgrade when it's truly a replacement or rehab would be a better naming convention for the public's perception.
And I realize from your standpoint and the public's maybe 2 different perspectives, but Susan, I would really suggest that this is, another piece of the kind of information that Haley and her team needs to be working on to explain, here's what we're doing. Because I think when we get to our next agenda item and we talk about rates, it's really important for the public to understand how much we have to spend just to maintain our current position without doing anything else. So, thank you.
Excellent comment, Suzanne.
Thank you,
Bob,
Commissioner
Bob?
McCombs. Just real quick, and Haley is listening on her phone, and that's one of the things she wanted to really get feedback from you tonight. So that's really good suggestion to add that kind of, whether we do kind of a video show or just a slideshow that people can go through to see what we've done. So thank you for those comments.
Yeah, very good. Hey, Bob?
I'm sorry, did you ask, Grant, am I up?
Yeah, any questions or comments on this item?
Yeah, I really want to thank Mr. Herbst and Mr. Nelson for all of this information. This has got to be the best report I've ever heard from your folks in the 10 years I've been on the Citizens Committee and on this commission. I mean, the explanation about the Water Control Center near Ventura High. I mean, folks need to know about that and why. I know I walk by it every day and I wondered what's going on. And this is really well done. And then slide number 7, inventive engineering on the Midtown to West Side line stop. I have to congratulate you guys. You're doing a great job. Come back to us more often if you would, please.
Thank you, Bob.
That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Commissioner McCombs. And I do want to point out that.
By the way, it's Bob.
I'm sorry, Bob. I mean, Commissioner McCombs, or not McCombs, McCord. So I do want to point out Ron Herbst is actually on the Ventura Water Department, but he did work for Public Works, and he's great, and so is Phil, and really appreciate both of them.
Great. Nova, do you have anything?
I think Bob and Suzanne covered it very well for me for my thoughts. Thank you both.
Okay, Jim, it's your turn.
Excellent presentation, very informative. Thank you.
And Susan Milligan.
I really appreciate the effort you went to think hard about prioritizing the projects and look carefully at staffing and think about what can really be done so the rates represent what can really be done. $18 million a year is ambitious but doable, I think, for 4 engineers managing it. I hope that 4th position you get, you can hire somebody with experience because that'll be important. I agree with the others. Engineers are bad at tooting their own horns, and sometimes you need some of the outreach people to help you do it. But describing what you're doing is really nuts and bolts, essential stuff, and people can understand it if it's explained, you know, improving a pump station and fixing this and that. I think it would help with the rates to do some more horn tooting on the capital projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, I appreciate Suzanne and Bob's comments, especially, you know, so many years at Metropolitan. I just presume everyone knows you don't put a water system in and then it's static. You got to maintain it, you got to improve it. And I was reminded of that today, and I agree with everyone's comments. So thank you, Ron. I think we have a public speaker. Is that correct?
Yes, we have one public speaker.
Go ahead,
you're
please.
unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, one that I was looking at that wasn't brought up is 97945, which is a well repair and intake restoration, which is a high priority item. That item, basically, the way I look at that is that's the rain average for what's going on with our water coming down. This year we've had 87 days with over 20 CFS. And I don't know how many actual CFS those pumps up there currently can actually produce. We're currently getting about 2 CFS a day, 2.5 from the looks of it. And I believe that that should be looked at as a possibility to put a pipe up to Casitas for extra water that's there, because that way we could bank some of that water. And basically, if you look at this year, it was 86% of the normal rain flow between, in the year we had 98 days of days that were over 20 CFS, which the extra water could have been pumped up to Casitas. And that's something I think we need to look at in regards to the potential of utilizing the systems we have to make a more efficient system. Thank you.
Thank you, Bert. Always informative. Anyone else have any questions or comments? If not, thank you, Ron, and we'll move on to the next item.
All right, thank you.
Number 3, 2020 water and wastewater rate study, revised financial plan scenarios. I think this is Akbar and Raftelis.
Yeah, and Commissioner Burton, I'm going to kind of kick it off here. So I do want to indicate that, you know, this presentation basically provides an overview of really what we've been through the last few months here to date. And so we have almost 100 slides. So what Kevin is planning to do tonight is to really just go through some of the major updates to the slides. And then if people have questions, I think there's two different numbers on some of the slides because they have slide numbers, and then we had to put them all in one big slide deck because the way WebEx is. So if you have questions at the end, the smaller number, please refer to that. And I do want to say that Michael Kuhn, our Director of Finance and Technology, is on the line, as well as you've heard from Phil Nelson before. So Phil's on the line too. And then Akbar Ali Khan is he's also here tonight on the line. And the two people from Raftellus who are going to present tonight, Kevin Kostick and then Charles Diamond is also here to answer questions, and then as well as the rest of staff. So I'll go ahead and give it off to you, Kevin.
Kevin, I think you're muted there.
I apologize. I unmuted myself on my phone and not on my computer. Good to be back with you, commissioners. Thanks for being with us tonight on Game 6 of the World Series. I'm sure this will be maybe more eventful. We'll see. As Susan teed up, what we provided you is significantly longer than any presentation that I think you'd want to sit through. I think we have 96 or 97 slides in the deck. So we wanted to provide was background and detail on all the assumptions and inputs into our financial plan models for the scenarios that we reviewed on October 6th. And we wanted to give some additional context to the revised scenarios that we'll be presenting tonight. The organization of the packet goes as following. We have the Ventura Water Pure inputs, assumptions, and financing strategy. We have some new slides that I will review tonight on public-private partnerships that was requested at our last meeting. And then we get into the water enterprise financial plan and revised scenarios, and then the wastewater enterprise financial plan assumptions and revised scenarios. Deborah, if we could go to pardon me. If we could go to slide, I believe it's 33. Which is titled, What is a P3? Let's go one slide before, please.
Okay.
So this is the new content, the new material from last time. Commissioner Mulligan had brought up a discussion on public-private partnerships, so we wanted to provide a little bit of background and some context on what a P3 is. It's not a one-size-fits-all. When we think about public-private partnerships, there's all sorts of different models. You see 6 of them here, straight from the Design Build Handbook. Ultimately, this is a, quote, collaborative delivery method that's combined with a performance commitment and a defined level of O&M and capital asset. So for very complex and large systems and projects, you'll have numerous partners, multiple agencies and entities to deliver on this large project. Because of that, these are very complex. There's a lot of legal context there. They're financially complex and lots of technical components. And so we don't see them used very often. We have some really high-profile cases that I think we provided some detail on, or that we might know about San Diego County Water Authority in Southern California, San Antonio Water System as well. If we can go to the next slide. So again, straight from the handbook, borrowing the benefits and the challenges with these types of structures. So benefits can include innovative financing structures where the owner, Ventura Water, would still retain ownership. A lot of the benefit is in the transfer of risk. So here saying optimization of the risk profile. So performance risk, labor risk, cost and scheduling risk, and so on. And the overall life cycle cost can be lower. So when we think about the initial capital cost, any reinvestment, future O&M, and so forth, we can, on a life cycle scale, see a lower cost. But the challenge there is that the cost of financing is higher. So we would expect that our initial construction cost, the minimum, would be significantly higher. This could be perceived as privatization by the community and by your ratepayers. Again, limited experience and limited projects as go-bys in the water industry, at least in the United States. And it needs a lot of advisory support, so we can translate that into legal fees, and they just tend to be very complex. Next slide. So kind of paring down that last table of so many benefits and challenges. When we think about the benefits and the challenges as they pertain to the future Ventura Water Pure project, the big benefit would be this risk transfer, where you're transferring the risk of the completion date of the project, certainty on construction costs, performance requirements that you push off to other entities and contractors. And there could be an efficiency in an approach where the construction and potentially the management and the future operations are all under one roof. There could be an efficiency there over the long term. But again, the challenges would be a higher overall cost. The investors are going to want a return on their investment, and effectively, because we're thinking about transferring risk, we can really think about this like an insurance premium, right? We're paying a premium to ensure that we meet completion schedules, or construction costs, and performance standards. The other big challenge would be the complexity of such an agreement with multiple parties and trying to work that out in a timely manner. And then there's the public perception. I think there's an animosity towards privatization and private utilities, and there's a sensitivity that ratepayers have that you may be transferring the assets, even if you aren't in name, that in practice it looks like you're transferring assets and you're privatizing part of your system. And that last bullet, I'm not entirely sure if we did provide some PDF case studies for San Diego County Water Authority and for San Antonio. If those haven't been provided, I'm happy to provide those to staff and we can forward them along. Next slide. As far as a P3 for Ventura Water Pure, because there are so many different approaches and because these are inevitably very complex, they're difficult to model. We do have some in-house expertise who have worked on those two projects that I've named, San Diego County, and San Antonio Water System. And we are going to attempt to quantify a what-if scenario to compare against the financial plan scenarios we'll present to you tonight. But that does require a lot of assumptions. We'll obviously be documenting those assumptions, but ultimately we're trying to come up with a what-if for you to at least check against. I'm almost certain that that's going to be higher than the financial plan options that we showed you tonight because, again, construction cost, risk transfer, you're going to be paying a premium for. Timeline TBD, we're hoping to work on that in the next month, and we will turn that around just as soon as we can. I think with that, we will skip ahead to our revised financial plan scenarios. And my slide, Deborah, is 58. Thank you. So we're going to start with water. And I know it's been 3 weeks, so we'll walk through these scenarios. We've struck the status quo scenario that we presented last time, which was effectively showing the current financial position of each utility. So scenario 1 is our recommended CIP. So that's the all-in CIP that was presented, and it excludes Ventura Water Pure. Scenario 2 is that all-in recommended CIP, including Ventura Water Pure, with a schedule completion of fiscal year 2026. Scenario 3A is what we're calling reduced CIP. What that is, it's the modified CIP with the 25% discount, or the assumption of a 75% completion of capital in each year. And that includes Ventura Water Pure. And then scenario 3B is just a wrinkle on 3A. It's the same, except we are looking at what if Ventura Water Pure was delayed by 2 years. So instead of being completed in fiscal year 2026, it would be completed in fiscal year 2028. Next slide. For anyone who wasn't on the call last time, I will walk through this first slide in some detail. So what we have in the table is each of the next 9 fiscal years, so fiscal year 2022, which would be the first year of the new rate plan, through fiscal year 2030. The next column is the revenue adjustment, and so a revenue adjustment represents the annual increase in gross revenues, so not necessarily rates to the end customer, but gross revenue at the utility level. The next column would be new Ventura Water Pure debt. So when we get into the scenarios where we're including Ventura Water Pure, you'll see values populated there for our Ventura Water Pure financing assumptions. And the last column is new non-Ventura Water Pure debt. And so that is debt that we are proposing to be issued to meet your regular R&R, repair and replacement capital program. So in this scenario, we would be proposing 5% revenue increases each year for the 9 years, a $10 million issue of debt in 2024, and $50 million in 2027. The chart on the right shows our reserve balance at the end of each fiscal year. So the bars represent funds, cash on hand or in the bank, and the red line is our reserve target. And that reserve target represents 3 months of operating costs and 1 year of average capital costs. And so we always want our blue bars to be at or above our red line, obviously starting out well above that and spending down reserves on capital, but always achieving our reserve targets over the long term. Next slide. So staying with the same scenario, just showing you your coverage. So you have existing debt, and we propose future debt, both in the scenarios that have Ventura Water Pure included, but also for the R&R program. And again, we have a minimum debt requirement that we need to achieve. That's the red line. And the blue line is our projected coverage. So relative to your minimum, we always need to be above. And the blue line is our calculated debt coverage ratio. Next slide. So now we go to scenario 2, which again is the all-in CIP with Ventura Water Pure. So now you see we're at 9% revenue increases in those first 5 years, and then 8% in the subsequent 4 years. Since we're including Ventura Water Pure now, we're including debt financing that's involved in that project. And then new non-Ventura Water Pure debt, $20 million issue in 2024, $30 million in 27, and $15 million in fiscal year 2029. And it's PJ time at my house, so you hear some toddler screams in the background. I apologize. Next slide. And just showing debt coverage in the table on the right. We're achieving our minimums in each year, even with the proposed issues. Next slide. So scenario 3 is our reduced capital plan. So the all-in, the recommended 10-year is 183 million or 18.3 per year. The reduced is 142 or 14.2 per year. So we're reducing each year by $4.1 million on average. Next slide. So we'll go through these charts again for scenario 3A. And this is, again, our 75% CIP with Ventura Water Pure included. We're at 8% per year for the 9 years shown. The Ventura Water Pure debt remains the same in all scenarios in which it's included. And then new non-Ventura Water debt in this scenario is 22 million in fiscal year 2027. Chart on the right showing that we're achieving our reserve minimums in each year over the long term. And if we go to the next slide, also achieving our minimum coverage requirements in each year. So 8% in scenario 3A, and then if we go to scenario 3B, the next slide. So again, the only difference between 3A and 3B is Ventura Water Pure being shifted out 2 years, the completion being shifted 2 years from 2026 to 2028. And you see we're at 8% for the first 5 years and then 5% thereafter. New Ventura Water Pure debt is slightly different, I believe, and the new non-Ventura Water Pure debt, $36 million issue in 2027. And again, just meeting our reserve minimums out in 2030, and then next slide, meeting our coverage as well. Next slide. So just a slide to put the comparison side by side. What we're showing here is those revenue adjustments in each scenario and each year side by side. Building up from scenario 1, so scenario 1 is our all-in CIP, but we're not funding and financing Ventura Water Pure, and we're at 5%. Scenario 2, 9% and 8%. 3A is 8 across the board, and 3B in those out years going from 8% to 5%. And then at the bottom, just showing you both the cumulative total, the nominal increases, and then compounded increases over the 9 years. That is a wrap for water. And now let's go to the wastewater scenarios, which, Deborah, is my slide 83. So I won't belabor this slide. It's exactly the same as on the water side. Scenario 1 is the all-in CIP without Ventura Water Pure. Scenario 2 is the all-in with Ventura Water Pure. 3A is our 75% fraction of CIP with Ventura Water Pure, and 3B is 3A with the 2-year delay. Next slide. So wastewater scenario 1, we're looking at 5% increase in the first 2 years and then 4% thereafter. The Ventura Water Pure column, not applicable because we're not financing that in this scenario. And then additional debt of 20 million in 2024 and 12 million in 2029 allows us to achieve our reserve minimums, our reserve target over the long term. And then next slide, also our debt coverage, healthy coverage there. Scenario 2 is next. So again, our complete all-in CIP with Ventura Water Pure, We're now at 9% for the first 2 years of the rate plan, 8% for the next 4 years, and then 6% the last 3 years of the 9-year horizon. The Ventura Water Pure debt now comes into play, and additional debt for the regular capital program, $20 million in 2024, $24 million in fiscal year 2028. And next slide. Still achieving our minimum coverage requirements. And next slide, we'll go to scenario 3. Same 75% fraction on the wastewater side. So our all-in recommended 10-year CIP for wastewater is $114 million, roughly 11.4 per year. The reduction in the 75% fraction is $89 million, or roughly 8.9 per year, for a difference of $2.5 million per year less in CIP. Next slide. So scenario 3A, the 75% share of CIP, including Ventura Water Pure, 8% for the 5-year rate plan, and 6% for the last 4 years of this look. Ventura Water Pure debt, as shown, and an additional issue proposed in 2028 of roughly $12 million to achieve our reserve minimums. And next slide, our debt coverage targets. And last is scenario 3B. Next slide. So again, 3A with the 2-year delay in Ventura Water Pure, 7% revenue adjustments each year for the first 6 years, 6% thereafter. The Ventura Water Pure debt financing is shown, and then a $20 million issue in fiscal year 2027 for the regular R&R program, and that allows us to achieve reserve targets. And our next slide, our debt coverage. And next slide should be our comparison. So we look at our scenarios side by side again, left to right, full CIP without Ventura Water Pure, scenario 2 being full CIP with Ventura Water Pure, 3A our reduced CIP with Ventura Water Pure, and 3B the delayed Ventura Water Pure. Scenario 1, 5% for the first 2 years, 4% thereafter. Scenario 2, now we go to 9s, 8s, and 6s towards the end of the horizon. 3A, 8% for the rate period, 6% thereafter. And with the delay by 2 years of Ventura Water Pure, our 8s go to 7s, our 6s remain the same at the back of the period. And once again, the cumulative totals at the bottom, and then the last line being the cumulative totals compounded. Those are our revised financial plan models, scenarios. I know that you've had some time, I hope everyone's had some time to review the larger packet in some detail, and I know there have been some questions received, and I'm certain there are some more questions and comments, and I think we will take those from you now.
Okay, food for thought, very interesting. Okay, we'll go in order again. Suzanne.
First question I have is on slides 30 and 75, where it's a breakdown of the O&M expense. One of my overarching questions is, why do we have so much increased O&M in the 5 fiscal years before we start delivering the first acre foot of water from Ventura Water Pure? If my understanding is correct, O&M costs are intended to be basically, costs of operation. And so my simplistic mind looks at that and says, we shouldn't have any O&M costs related to Ventura Water Pure until those systems and facilities come online. If that's 2026, why do we have incremental O&M costs in the meantime? My concern is, are we double counting? Are those costs perhaps real, but should they be considered CIP as opposed to O&M?
So Kevin, if you want me to, I can go ahead and answer that one maybe. So Commissioner McCombs, so when we were going through this, we had the same thoughts internally. So we did look at the information provided to Raftellus. It does include approximately 35 new employees, which so what we're planning to do is go back in there, and we agree some of the employees are engineers who would be spending probably at least 70, maybe 70 to 80% of their time on CIP projects. So we're going to go through and refine these numbers. We have a meeting internally next week to do that. So we do agree some of these O&M costs seem high, and so we're going to basically revise this sheet here. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. Another general question. If I understood some of the slides with regard to how the various CIP components are going to be financed, on slide 19 and in a couple of other, and 31, there were references to the fact that wetlands improvements would be paid from PAYGO and excluded from all financing. Is that because the quote wetlands improvements are funded by our existing balances in the Estuary Protection Fund?
I can take this. That is simply an assumption that was provided early on in the study by staff to be paid, to be cash funded. It's the same bucket of funds that would be used. It's simply a matter of how much and when those funds would be used on what component of the project. You do have an existing balance in the Estuary Protection Fund, and you'll have an ongoing revenue stream from those charges as well. But at the end of the day, they all go into the same bucket of monies to be spent on Ventura Water Pure. And I'm not sure if that completely answered your question.
Well, it does, but it leads me to a comment. And again, this goes back to sort of the public outreach messaging element of things. And that is, I think it's important for us to be communicating to the citizens exactly what we're using the rates we've collected from them to fund. And it was my understanding that the original impetus for having something separate on our bill called the Estuary Protection Fund was that those funds would be earmarked to deal with the costs related to protecting the estuary. So I agree with you, Kevin. At the end of the day, it all kind of goes into a big bucket. But I think from a messaging standpoint, it's important to be clear that we intend to use those funds and how they're going to be used and how they are just a component of everything that has to be done in order to make Ventura Water Pure function. And so that may not necessarily affect the rate side of things and how you model it, but I do think it's important for us to be taking those kinds of elements into account as Haley and Susan, as they start going out to the public and they start talking about what it is we're going to do. Because otherwise, I think we run the risk of the public feeling like, oh, that's just one more thing you're charging me for, and you're not ever going to do anything with it.
Commissioner McCombs. This is Miles Hogan. I think another reason for the wetlands being listed as PAYGO is that if we are able to achieve improvements at the wastewater treatment plant for the next 5 years that reduce the amount of nitrogen in our discharge, then it's possible the wetlands will not be needed during phase 1B. And so I think that was part of the reason not to include them in the overall financing, whether it be WIPIA or bonds, and to separate them as PAYGO, because I think the hope is that if we achieve those goals, they would not be necessary.
So further to that, if we were to achieve those goals, could we then repurpose those funds towards other elements of Ventura Water Pure once that determination had been made?
Yes.
So I think that's an important factor to say, we may be planning to do it this way, but in the event that we achieve the discharge levels that we're hoping for, this will be additional source of funds that can go towards other costs. Again, just making the point that we are mindful of the resources that we already have and we are thinking about how we're using them. So my last overarching comment, rather than get into, you know, lots of nits and gnats, would be, I am still uncomfortable that when you look at, for example, the slide that's in front of us right now, that shows the overall comparison, or if we were to look at the same one for water, that when you're the average citizen in town and you look at that bottom line and you see that what they're going to hear is, oh my gosh, our rates are going to double. There's a 92.5% cumulative increase in our wastewater rates. It's over 100 for water. I think what's going to happen is the message about the column to the left in scenario 1 is going to be completely overlooked and lost. My very real concern is that if we try and move forward with a scenario that allows us to fund Ventura Water Pure with all of these uncertainties about the timing for how quickly we can complete the CIP, for the actual costs of these project components, which have not yet been designed and so clearly cannot have been costed with any accuracy, that we run a real risk of the public saying, I'm not going to approve any rate increase at all. And my very strong argument would be, we have to get the public back in a mindset of understanding that even if we do nothing, we have to raise rates to maintain our existing infrastructure and systems. And according to these studies, that's a minimum of 5 to 4% for the foreseeable future. So my comment would be, I think perhaps we need to think about moving forward with rates, but for a shorter period of time that allows us to get those projects going and perhaps doesn't get us all up into the embroiled controversy over how much Ventura Water Pure, how fast can we get it done, and so on. Understanding that there is definitely a cost to doing another rate study, but I would argue that it would be a win to get a reasonable set of rate increases for the next 3 or 4 years. And by then we might have much better clarity to be able to then tackle the component of the rates that we would need for Ventura Water Pure.
All good. Yes. Bob, questions, comments?
Well, I don't think I can build much on Commissioner's comments. It's pretty apparent about all of the uncertainties that we face. We've had project changes, which are good. As announced by Mr. Herbst, we've got also unknowns. Why we cannot move through this with gradualized rate increases until we know exactly what our projects are going to cost. I understand what you want to do, but I don't think the public's going to go for it. Because if you try to answer questions about certain projects and their costs going down the line, we can provide not enough certainty. And so therefore, I think I'm not sure about scenario. I think scenario 1 is where I'm right now, maybe scenario 2, but I haven't sorted it out. And there are so many uncertainties that if you're going to ask for a decision tonight, I got to tell you, I'm not on board with that. So that's all I want to say.
Okay. Understood, Nova?
Thank you. I appreciate the comments on the uncertainties. However, I think that Ventura Water Pure, the basic engineering involved in it, most of it is something that can be estimated. You know, pipelines, the purification plant, there are enough examples of similar plants out there that we should be able to come up with an engineering cost on it. So I get the point of, you know, not pushing this too hard with the ratepayers, given that there are some uncertainties. It just seems that I'm worried about delaying action on current decisions before this body just because we're not 100% sure of something, we're never going to be 100% sure. So I'm not sure about that. I appreciate Commissioner McComb's idea of maybe going with a shorter rate time frame, but these are ideas I haven't even thought about yet. So anyway, let me just get to my questions. I had a few detailed questions, but the big one is with the delayed construction schedule for Ventura Water Pure. I think there's a potential advantage in that the State Water Resources Control Board is required by AB 571 to have a direct potable reuse regulation by December 31st, 2023. So that would work into a delayed Ventura Water Pure construction schedule, because it's possible with the information I've been reading and looking into that a DPR, direct potable reuse policy, would allow with, you know, controls and monitoring and all of that, would allow us to take the Ventura Water Pure water and use it more directly, rather than going through all the expense and complexity of putting it in an aquifer, you know, with injection wells and then pumping it back out. So thinking about this, I think that proposed delay schedule has a couple benefits. One is this potential change in the state regulation, which seems to be coming along. And the other is to allow for more certainty on some of the costs, which are some of the comments that have just been brought up. So I'll just put that out there. I don't know if that policy change was part of the thinking behind the delayed schedule, or if it just is a financial thing, but I think there are some advantages to scenario 3B. And I'll leave it with that and see what the other commissioners have to say.
Thank you, Nova.
Thank you.
Jim?
I don't think I know enough about what's going on to really have any specific comments, other than this is very enlightening as far as which direction the city's going to go as far as water pure and future development of these programs. But as a concerned citizen, it's very difficult to understand how we're going to convince taxpayers, ratepayers, that they need to step up and improve their water supply. But that's our job to do that, to inform them.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Susan Milligan.
At first, I want to say thank you. I think the slides that were sent to us and with plenty of time gave me all the information I felt like I needed to understand what was going on and what went into the rate. So I appreciate your putting that together. I had a couple of questions for staff, and I want to share the answers and then sort of my reactions to that. On the capital improvement schedule, I asked the question whether that schedule includes Phase 1A and Phase 1B of water pure, because as you may recall, Phase 1A is what needs to be built, takes care of half the capacity, and then there was going to be a monitoring period to see whether 1B needed to be done. It's my understanding that the regulatory deadline for 1B, if it has to be built, is 2030. Currently, the capital improvement plan shows all of that being done, even in the delayed schedule, well before 2030, and that will drive up costs, putting all that early in the schedule. So I would ask that staff look carefully at the timing of the funds necessary to invest in Phase 1B of the capital expenditures. Another question I had was about the labor expenditures for operations and maintenance. They looked awfully high to me. 30 positions is really a lot for one treatment plant and some ASR wells and some pipe. I would recommend that staff take a very careful look at other plants that are similar. Oxnard, Camarosa Water District. There are others similar scale. Port Hueneme Water Agency has a similar size plant. And look at the staff that they require, and perhaps update the O&M schedule. So that would be an update to the CIP and O&M schedules. I have a comment about the estuary charge. It's currently at 10%, but that doesn't really reflect any specific costs, as I understand it, any specific calculation of cost. I would recommend that it either reflect actual cost to protect the estuary, which includes water pure, or just get rid of it because it's sending a message that we know what that cost is and it's 10%. And then finally, I would agree with some other of the commissioners' comments that given the uncertainty about expenditures, and I think Nova is right, that we look at a 3-year approval of rates. I think Nova is right. You can estimate pretty well what these facilities cost. What you don't know is exactly when you'll spend the money. And 3 years from now, presumably design will be well underway, right-of-way acquisition, permitting, and right now we're at conceptual level of design, and it's just hard to know when that needs to be spent. So I would ask that the rate analysis be updated to reflect some changes in the O&M costs and CIP schedule, and perhaps brought back to us, and I would be more comfortable approving 3 years worth of rates. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Rungan, do you have any comments on the commissioner's thoughts so far?
Sure. A couple things. That's one thing we are going to do, Commissioner Mulligan, is look at the O&M costs. I think I talked about that in that slide. What's number 30 for me? And we are definitely going to look at those positions, that information, and look at the timing. I think one of the things, just like our CIP costs, they're estimates. They're usually plus or minus 5 or 10%. Our CIP costs for Ventura Water Pure projects have been vetted through several times. I think we do have really good cost on the CIP side of it. I mean, we just went through all this with council a few times to look at United costs compared to Oxnard costs, et cetera. So I feel like the costs are really good at this point in time.
Maybe I can clarify. I don't dispute the capital costs. I just question whether the 1B costs ought to be put in the schedule so early. All I'm questioning is the labor costs, and you said that you're looking into that anyway.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Mulligan, if I may, we had our consultants just kind of do a back of the envelope calculation about if we were to reduce the O&M costs once the facility is constructed, what that might do for the proposed revenue adjustments. And what we found was in the, Kevin, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, in the 4th and 5th year of the study period, it could result in a decrease from 8% down to 7% if we were to shave off something like $1 million worth of ongoing O&M costs. So I say that as kind of an estimate, so that way even if we go back and do the analysis, it's not like we're going to wildly swing the proposed revenue adjustments based off that one change. 1% is a difference. I don't want to trivialize it, but I just want to set the expectations among the commission that once we go back and tinker with some of these, they're not minor, but relative to the big project, they are minor. It's not going to swing the proposed revenue adjustments all that much. The revenue that we need to generate for the enterprise is still going to be rather substantial.
I think 1 million is probably quite feasible with those labor costs, and 1% matters.
Absolutely.
I think it's still worth it.
Absolutely. And I also want to remind the commission, because I was jotting down some notes as the commissioners were speaking. Prop 218 does set a ceiling. And what we are able to do as a water agency is adjust rates up to that ceiling. So for example, if the commission were to approve a 5-year rate schedule that had 8% for each year of the study period, and it just so turned out that only 7% was needed in years 4 and 5, we have the latitude to only go up to 7%. So that option is still in our back pocket. The other thing, I heard the word uncertainty quite a bit in the last few minutes. we do have some certainty, particularly around the capital costs. And Commissioner Mulligan, I think you said that a minute ago. We have experts that have designed other systems that have produced these cost estimates for us. And so we lean on those experts for those estimates. And we're operating on the best available data that we have today. Now, of course, as Commissioner McCombs mentioned, that data gets more refined as time goes by, but I would not expect that to change substantially in the future as we go through the design process. So the other thing to consider when we're looking at a potential 2-year or 3-year rate adoption is we are going to have to secure debt at some point. And one thing that that bond issuers like to look at is what is your projected revenue? Can you sustain this much debt? And one way of showing that is an adopted revenue adjustment or rate adjustment that's been approved by both the Commission and City Council. My fear, and I just want to caution the Commission if they go down that route, is that absent a 5-year revenue adjustment schedule, I just would want to make sure that we don't send the wrong signals to the issuing agencies. The other thing to consider too is the rate study process that we're in right now takes roughly 12 to 18 months. It's a big lift for staff. Obviously, we hire consultants that help us with that process, but that's a big effort that obviously it plays a role on Susan's workload and for her and her staff. But lastly, we do need to show that we are making a bona fide attempt to meet the consent decree deadline. I know there's some challenges with the deadline, but we do need to show that we are making a good faith effort to try and meet it. And while these revenue adjustments are substantial, the one thing I think is worthy to point out is, if you take 8% over the next 5 years, it's an overall 40% increase and more when you compound it. But we have to keep in mind that since fiscal year 18, 19, 19, 20, and 2021, which is what we're in today, we've had 0% increase. So when you factor in the fact that we have 3 years of no increases and spread those revenue adjustments over not 5 years, but really 8 years, we haven't had any for 3 years. That's more like a 5% or 5.5% increase per year. So I mentioned that only because part of the reason we're behind the ball a little bit is the fact that we've had 3 years without any revenue adjustments. So I'll leave it at that for now, and I'll keep jotting down some more notes as commissioners continue to make comments. Thanks.
Okay, Susan Mulligan.
My question is about the bond funding. It's looking like you're not going out for bond funding till fiscal 2026. So how would 5-year rate approval now help for 2026 bond issuance?
I can take that one off if you like.
Sure, go ahead, Kevin.
So Commissioner Mulligan, in the scenarios where we're financing Ventura Water Pure, we do have WIFIA and SRF coming online well prior to that. And in addition, even excluding Ventura Water Pure, you have your own internal debt loads currently. And if we're talking about issuing further debt, we want to show good debt capacity, right? The ability to issue additional debt. And that comes from your revenue generation from rates. So not just cash on hand, but your rate revenue base. So it's as much about debt capacity in the future and being able to, as Akbar said, show the ability to meet coverage and to take on the debt load in the future.
I understand that, but you're not going to the rating agencies until you actually issue the debt. And I don't think anybody's proposing that we not approve rates after 3 years, just that we just approve for 3 years now.
Yeah, I guess the caveat would be in our mind that that 3-year proposal would still look like what we're showing in 3A and 3B to be able to begin generating that revenue base. so that when you get to years 4 and 5, you're in a position to fund what we're showing now, as far as the capital costs for Ventura Water Pure, the long-term CIP program, and so forth.
And should the future look like this and the expenditures be needed, then in 3 years, those rate increases as you propose will be needed. But if they aren't, then they won't.
And just to reiterate one point that Akbar did make, which is you can adopt rates up to 5 years, and it sets a ceiling. So council can always choose to implement a rate anything lower than the maximum rate that was adopted. They just can't go above that rate without going through a new 218 process. And so what it does is it gives you flexibility within one rate study to revisit years 4 and 5 rates without going through an entire new rate study and 218 process, where you have to, we go through the same song and dance, we go to council, we have to notice every one of our customers and readopt rates.
Okay, I have one question for Susan Rundgren, and I have some comments. Susan, what is the status of this commission's thoughts on Ventura Water Pure approval, not approval, whatever? What's the last thing we did on this?
On Ventura Water Pure itself?
Yes.
It's the EIR has been certified and it's moving forward.
That's what I thought. Okay. Given that, our thoughts on that, and given there's no question in my mind that it's obviously going to cost a lot of money, we could opt for reasonable rate increases now and spread over a period of time, or we could put it off for the future. And I think reasonable rate increases will become unreasonable rate increases. So I don't want to, it's never pleasant to be the people who are going to ask for more money from our rate payers. We're going to have to deal with our friends at the barbecues and whatnot being angry with us, but sooner or later, this thing's going to have to be funded. So my thoughts are we should begin to do that now. I like, if you want to hold us to 5 years, I guess I'm okay with that, but it should be the numbers recommended in my mind in 3A. And those are my thoughts. Any other questions or comments?
I could, if you want me to answer Commissioner Kleit's question on DPR.
Okay.
So for that one, Commissioner Kleit, so we are looking at if DPR regulations are approved, say in 2025, we still anticipate the state's going to require us to do IPR for at least a year and pilot that program. So it would still allow the city to move forward with DPR. And that's why the project is really, IPR is included in phase 1A for 2025, but we could consider DPR in the future. And that's been supported by the Water Commission and Council. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, so even if DPR is allowed by the state, we would still need to run a 1-year aquifer injection IPR program?
Most probably, and depending on the amount of water we get from the estuary, we may need to use that for storage anyway, so we may need injection wells for storage.
Okay, so avoiding injection wells is probably something that we can't count on in any case. We'll probably need the injection wells one way or the other is what you're concluding.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else on the commission want to weigh in? I believe we have one. I'm sorry, go ahead. This is Bob.
I would, there are so many moving parts to what we're talking about. So it's hard to bring it all together in a cogent way. But I thought I would just share a couple of comments. First, the estimates of our CIP, I think Commissioner Kleit is right. We have made a really good effort to estimate the cost of the components. We had a bit of good news, for example, tonight, where one of our estimates was reduced. The West Side Line Stop, for example. That was almost a $9 million project that now is greatly reduced. So there are variables and things are going to change as we move down the road, if I understand Mrs. Rundgren's messages. So that's the first thing. So I think our estimates have been fairly well thought out, but we have to be flexible to recognize that there are things that are going to go up and things that are going to go down. And my concerns is we start collecting a lot of money on the worst possible scenario now, and then we will not know where we are in 2025 or 2028 in reality. So next, there's the comment about the consent decree. The consent decree, there's a couple of comments. The Deputy City Attorney mentioned, for example, the estuary requirement and the requirement that we reduce the nitrate concentrations. It requires it be a reduction from 8 parts per million to 4 parts per million. And we now currently have $12 million in that estuary account. But yet we have an unknown as exactly how the nitrates are going to be reduced. Perhaps there is an answer, but I don't know what it is at this point. And I haven't heard that from the engineers. But to, for example, continue the estuary fee at 10%, and then we increase rates, does that mean the estuary fee will be 10% of the increased rates? So at what point do we put a limit on what's required in the estuary? Because we do not know. And so therefore that comes back to the fact that we're trying to collect money for something that we don't know what's required. So would someone propose, for example, eliminating the estuary fee? And then there's the Prop 218 problem. Prop 218 requires that we limit the cost to our ratepayers the cost of service. It's a direct benefit. The estuary fee and the wetlands fee, it's a Prop 218 problem. So that's an unknown, for example. Finally, there's the financing. We have current debt. We have certificates of participations, and I think we have bond issues, and I think the debt's, as I recall, somewhere around $50 or $60 million. Please correct me if I'm wrong on that. I have the debt somewhere, but I'm not positive of it.
Mr. McCord, this is Michael Kuhn, the finance director. The total outstanding debt's around $90 million.
Well, thank you for that. Okay. I'm glad to know that, because I'm mindful of also what the Citizens Committee did about 8 or 9 years ago of trying to limit our debt, that we're going to consider it 50% max. We don't want to leverage beyond that. So that's a lot of unconnected thoughts and comments that are bouncing around in my head together with everything else. Honestly, when I heard Commissioner Burton talk about 5 years versus 3 years, I don't think I can be that. I don't know how I can skim that one. I don't know how to do that. And I'm open to suggestions, but I have a problem with raising whole tons of money right now for projects we're not sure about. So I'm also looking at a shorter period. So with all of that unconnected thinking, I don't have anything else to say.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Anyone else want to chime in?
I have a little bit more, one more thing.
Okay.
Given all the discussion, I do want to say that I'm comfortable tonight recommending the staff recommended scenario 3A for 3 years, because I think that any adjustments and concerns that have been raised, at least by me tonight, can be addressed in year 4 if they need to be. So I'm comfortable with the recommended rate increases for 3 years tonight.
If that motion is made, that's something I can support too. So anyone else?
This is Suzanne. May I ask a couple questions of Akbar and Michael?
Yes, of course.
I called Miles Hogan earlier this afternoon and asked him one of the questions that you alluded to, Akbar, I think it was you, said, under Prop 218, if we raise rates to a given level, can we basically slow our implementation of those? And so Miles said yes, and you, I believe Akbar said yes. My question is, from a logistical standpoint, if we were to recommend to council that we move forward with either scenario 3A or 3B, how much notice is required internally as it would relate to, for example, us making a slight modification to that, saying to council, we recommend these rates, we try and get them approved, but we want to revisit how quickly we actually implement those on this sort of a schedule. What's a feasible and realistic time frame to consider that kind of a sort of an interim step, assuming that we could even get these rates approved?
So I think what you're asking, Commissioner McCombs, is more of a logistical billing question. And, you know, we adjust rates every summer. We could make that, if there was a mechanism which we could institute, we could make the motion, one of your colleagues or yourself could make the motion that if we were to proceed with a 5-year rate adjustment as recommended by staff, that there would be a check-in, say in year 3, whereby the commission could offer to endorse the final 2 years or set the parameters for what that 4th year may look like. Maybe it's 7%, maybe it's 6%, whatever the enterprise may need, because we are a cost of service agency. We can certainly do that. We would just need to time it such that we're able to make those adjustments in time for the July 1st effective bill period. So as long as we start that effort, say in the springtime, come back to commission, get some guidance on that 4th year revenue adjustment, you know, it's something that we could accommodate. However, when I look at the 5-year proposed scenario 3A, what that does is it authorizes the revenue adjustment in years 4 and 5. But ultimately, if this commission wishes, it gives us some flexibility to where we could come back and revisit the conversation, have the conversation like you just mentioned, but not have to send a notice out to 32,000 customers, not have to do another rate study, and obviously the time investment that goes along with that. And then the kind of the unsung hero here is what Ms. Matsukawa had started the meeting with. There's going to be a huge public engagement effort that's going to span the next several months. So if we can somehow leverage this effort for the next 5 years instead of the next 3 years and institute that check-in as you are suggesting, to me, that would be an ideal scenario. But the question is, yes, we can accommodate it.
My question is not so much, I understand the rollout of billing on a July 1 basis. I guess I'm asking you to, and perhaps I should have also directed my question to Mr. Nelson, you know, how much lead time are the 3 of you and Susan going to need together to basically come back and give us the sort of status that I would envision, which is, we told you we were going to deliver, you know, 24.6 million of non-Ventura Water Pure CIP every year. We said we were going to deliver Ventura Water Pure CIP on this basis, and here's where we are, such that the commission could then say, Phil, you are doing a whiz-bang job. Absolutely, we're charging full steam ahead. We can support moving forward. Or, whoops, you know, we weren't able to hire the staff as quickly as we anticipated, or we ran into permitting challenges or construction challenges. And in fact, we're not spending at the pace we thought we'd be. So we can in fact delay implementation of yet another, you know, one of those increases for some period of time. My question is really, how long do we need to do that part of the check-in to say whether or not we're accomplishing anything? Because again, I'll restate my previous comment, and that is, I have a very real concern about whether or not we can get scenario 3A or 3B approved by the citizens. I think they're going to choke, and I'm afraid they're going to revolt. So I don't want us to end up in a situation where we don't get anything approved.
There's 2 questions there. I'm going to have Mr. Nelson address the first one, and then I'll chime in on the second one when he's finished.
Thank you. If I understand the question, what you're asking for is when we would plan on doing a check-in on how we're doing on executing the program. And we're happy to do that at the frequency that the commission would like. I'd like to talk it over with Susan and Ron, to see what they have in mind. We currently are providing City Council with a quarterly update on our CIP execution. It's a consent item, but it's a list of the projects that are in the CIP and where they currently are in the process. Be happy to do that with the Water Commission, or however you'd like that presented, whatever frequency you would like. Be happy to do that.
Thanks, Oli. And Commissioner McCombs, if I can address your second question around the public sentiment. If we do our job correctly on the outreach front, we'll have an opportunity to shape public sentiment. And I want to remind ourselves of the position we were in the year 2012 when we were getting ready to implement some sizable increases back then. And those of you who have been on the commission for some time will remember that. But kudos to the staff back then and to the commission who laid the groundwork to allow that to happen. So we're in a similar position today, and perhaps even more of a monumental one, where we're going to have to redouble that effort, and which is why we're kind of starting this outreach campaign well in advance of July 1st, 2021, because we understand we need to build that support from around the community, and that's why we're starting in October. The one thing to also keep in mind, it was in the materials that were provided, that we are third from the bottom from our regional competing agencies when it comes to water and sewer rates for a single-family residential home, an average residential single-family home. And we've had it decent for some time as Ventura residents, and yes, costs are going up, and we do have a challenge here with constructing a project like this. But there's going to be cost increases associated with that, but that only would put us from the lower quartile maybe to the mid or slightly above the mid. And so it's important to keep our water rates in the context of water rates regionally and what those have done. And the last thing I'll remind the commission on is, you may recall the polling data, and Haley mentioned it today, from FM3. One of the questions that was asked to our residents was kind of what they'd be willing to pay for a project that would produce water reliability for the city and improve water quality. And what we saw was $20 was kind of an upper bound. And so what we're proposing as part of recommendation 3A here, scenario 3A, now keep in mind that was just for Ventura Water Pure, kind of falls in line, is inconsistent with that. So that's all to say that, we have a big lift in front of us on the outreach side, and if we do our job right now, I'm hopeful that we can affect public sentiment to the positive.
Let me echo that. In the many years at Metropolitan, we had to go out and get public support for funding of various projects, and I can't think of any time when we failed. The public is normally, when it comes to water capital projects, they understand the need for it, and they almost always agree with it. So that's my experience in this kind of thing. I don't know Ventura particularly as well as Suzanne does, but I think it's something that can be sold to the public because, we got truth on our side in my mind. Anyone else?
I do want to iterate one of the points that we're going to make too for, going for outreach and stuff is, when you look at the numbers, of course, 50% increase, et cetera, you really need to look at what is the increase per household. So say your average citizen, is it $2? Is it $20? What are they willing to pay for, other like bottled water, et cetera? People don't even blink an eye sometimes with bottled water, and they're paying, 150% more. So part of our outreach stuff too is really to look at what is the cost of water, what's the benefit of water, and especially compared to other things. So I just want to put that out there.
Okay, thank you. I think we have a public comment.
Grant, I have a question. May I?
Okay, sure.
I think Mrs. Rembrandt pretty much just said it. That unlike the comment about the opportunity to shape public sentiment, I don't think it's our job to shape any sentiment. If we are present the people of this community with the facts about what we need, they will do what they need to do. That's my experience. So I don't want to shape anything, but I want them to have the true facts of the costs. So I suggest that that kind of approach of trying to shape something is the wrong way to go. Perhaps it was misspoken, or perhaps I've misinterpreted the comment. I understand that. But keep in mind that back in 2012 and 13, the average family of 4 was using 2,000 cubic feet of water. Today, it's estimated 1,600 cubic feet. How come we can't say this is what it cost you then? There are reasons for the increases, and this is what 1,600 cubic feet is going to cost a family of 4 versus what it was 7 years ago. So those kind of facts would help people get on board with what we all are trying to do here. So that's my only last comment.
Thank you, Commissioner McCord. But again, I apologize. My comment was not meant to be sinister or manipulative. It was just meant to illustrate that we are going to have to help educate residents and businesses, and there's going to be a big lift involved. And to your point, those examples you just mentioned, in fact, are part of the presentation that Ms. Matsukawa is drafting along with our outside help in terms of messaging. So we hope that those points are going to be salient, and we hope that they're going to be effective in trying to get our message across.
Thank you, Akbar. Any other commissioners before I go to the public comment? Hearing none, public comment.
We have one public speaker, Bert Handing.
Bert, you're unmuted.
Hey, Bert.
Can you folks hear me?
Yes.
You're muting me. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, Bert.
Okay, it says mute on mine, so I don't know what's going on with it. Basically, there's two things I was looking at on it. When you look at the Monterey, the Orange County, and the San Diego operations, they're always putting out information as to what the cost is per acre foot. Now, I haven't heard any conversation about that whatsoever in their conversations, and I believe that is something that should be put out so people can compare to other areas as to what's going on. And the other factor is the WIFIA loans that we have. The WIFIA loans have the capability of running to 5 years after completion before you have to pay. And with all the cost factors and everything else that's going on, I believe that should be factored into the evaluation of the cost for this operation. So say it doesn't complete until 2027. That means we would not have to start paying until 2032. So consequently, it gives you that 5-year gap. The way it's set up now, they have a max of 1 year on it, and that would give you an extension for some of the items that you're trying to cover. Thank you.
Thank you, Bert. I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the staff recommended scenario 3A for a period of 3 years.
I'll second the motion.
The motion has been made and seconded. Let's call the roll.
Jim Ackerman,
Yes.
Nova Clyde,
Yes.
Susan McComb,
Suzanne?
Yes.
Bob McCord,
Yes.
Susan Mulligan,
Yes.
Grant Burton.
Despite my promise of support earlier, I think it should be 5 years, but so I'll vote no.
5-1.
Okay, the motion is carried. Thank you, everyone. That was a very good discussion. Okay, number 5, consideration of California State Water Project Delta Conveyance Facility, Conveyance Agreement in Principle. Department of Water Resources Delta Conveyance Funding Agreement, and it's Jennifer.
Okay, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I'm here tonight to talk about the State Water Project again. Asking for, or we're going to talk about the Delta Conveyance Facility, looking at the agreement in principle and a funding agreement. Next. So just a reminder here that the city of Ventura participates in the State Water Project through agreements with the county, Casitas Municipal Water District, and United Water Conservation District. Our entitlement is for 10,000 acre feet per year. Next. And if this topic sounds a little bit like deja vu, you are correct. We have in some way approved this in the past. In October 2018, the Water Commission recommended approval of the agreement in principle for California Water Fix. That was for 2 tunnels. However, less than a year later, the governor announced he did not support Water Fix, and so the process was restarted with a single tunnel. The DWR has been working since then to reach a new agreement in principle with the state water contractors, and that was completed in April. And so now DWR and the state water contractors are looking to move forward with identifying the level of contractor participation in the project, and then getting those funding agreements for the planning. So a lot of these questions about the benefits of the project and what exactly the project will look like can be answered through that planning exercise. Next. Okay, so just as a reminder, the objective of the Delta Conveyance project facilities is to restore and protect the ability to deliver state project water supply. And that is, it needs climate resiliency to address climate change impacts. It needs seismic resiliency to protect from the risk of earthquakes on the system, water supply reliability, and operational resiliency. Next. So just a reminder for what we're going to be, as I go through the Delta Conveyance project overview, to keep in mind what we're talking about, what we're asking the Water Commission to consider this evening is on the review of the agreement in principle for the contract amendment, in terms of identifying what level of participation the city would like to have. And then also, like I said, consider funding for the planning process. And then later in 2023, once the planning process has proceeded down the path, then the state will come back and ask for approval of the actual contract amendments. Next. So this just goes over the schedule for the planning process. And like I said, there'll be sort of a check-in in 2023 once that final EIR is completed, and that will be the discussion of finalizing those contract amendments and agreements. Next. So like I said, the notice of preparation for the CEQA documents was completed in January. And so the proposal is for a single tunnel up to 6,000 CFS. DWR is considering alternatives ranging from 3,000 to 7,500 CFS, and varying degrees of involvement from the CVP. And then the final choice of alternatives will be in the draft EIR, and that's in development. Next. So the facilities associated with this project are going to be 2 intakes, 1 tunnel with 2 potential corridors are being considered, 2 forebays, a pumping plant, the conveyance facilities, and then there'll be minor other ancillary facilities. Next. Okay, so status. Like I said, the scoping process was completed in January and or began in January, and the draft EIR is underway to consider all those comments and potential impacts and alternatives. DWR screening project alternatives and refining those. And those will be, like I said, presented in the draft EIR. Next. Okay, so what are the benefits of the Delta Conveyance project? So that's really the purpose of the planning process that's going to be underway. Since the project operations have not been identified, that there's not a way to definitively state what those benefits are. However, the DWR has done some course estimates with their modeling, and I'm going to go over a little bit here, and so it kind of gives an idea of what those benefits may be. And I think it's really one of those is to maintain the reliability of the system in the face of all those challenges that I mentioned before, and we'll talk a little bit more about next. So this slide was provided by the State Water Contractors, and what it recognizes is that the Delta Conveyance project will operate under future conditions, and those conditions, exact conditions, are unknown. And so if the future conditions are unknown, the future benefits are also unknown. And so this sort of sets up, the risks that face the project and that face not only the Delta Conveyance project, but the State Water project in general. And so they looked at 5 combinations of future scenarios, regulatory, climate and sea level, and seismic risk, and looked at each scenario with and without the Delta Conveyance project. So next. So what I tries to do is to really quantify that increase in reliability that gets talked about, or that maintenance of reliability for the project in terms of thousands of acre feet per year. As you can see, and so what we're talking about is, maintaining this annual average of 60% delivery or allocations versus what, if nothing's done, it would be 35 to 52% annual allocation. And so what it's trying to do is to reduce some of that risk in the future. And there was some modeling done to say that these are the range of increases in exported water that can occur under those conditions. Like I said, these benefits will be refined through the planning process and over time. Next. So how much is this tunnel going to cost? How much is this project going to cost? And I'm not going to go, there's been a variety of cost estimates in the past, and I'm not going to go over those, but the new cost is $15.9 billion for the single tunnel. And obviously that will also be refined through the planning process, but that's sort of the planning cost right now. Next. So this slide just kind of goes through who's paying for the project. And so the north of Delta contractors are out. And then because this new AIP has an opt-out provision, several of the south of Delta, 6 of the south of Delta contractors have indicated that they are opting out. That includes Santa Barbara County. So that leaves the remaining 18 contractors to pay for the project and also to allocate that some of the water that the non-participating contractors will be leaving in the mix. And so I'll get to that in a little bit, what that means for us. Next. Okay, so an overview of the agreement in principle, like I said, opt-out provision where contractors can opt out of the benefits and the costs. And then obviously that leaves other contractors the ability to assume additional costs and benefits, which we'll discuss later. And then once the contract extension billing date is set, then that will be the effective date. And then your costs, again, your costs are scaled by your benefits and your participation table. So next. So we talked about, like I said, the actual cost for the tunnel was 15.9 billion. And then there's these planning costs in order to complete environmental permitting and also the planning and design. And so that's estimated. On this table here, we have 331.5 million. There were 4 contractors that have footed the bill for the current planning in the amount of about $9 million. And so they need to recoup those costs. So the total planning costs are around almost 341 million. And those are to be split amongst the participating contractors. Next. Okay, so like we said, there's these 3 options for participating in the project, and that's opt out, opt in at 100%, and then opt in at 100% plus, where we can recoup or take advantage of the fact that some contractors are not participating. And these costs are based on the $15.9 billion cost estimate. So obviously at an opt-out scenario, there's 0 cost and 0 benefit. At 100% for the Ventura County contract, that would be at 0.48%. That's the overall percentage of the contract we would hold. And that's for the whole county would be 76 million, for the city would be 38 million. And that would maintain the current average allocation of 60%. And then for the opt-in plus, that would get us up to 0.55%, and then it would cost 87 million for the county and 43.5 million for the city. And the increase between the opt-in at 100% and the opt-in at greater than 100% is approximately 2,000 acre feet for the county. So it'd be around 1,000 acre feet per year for the city. And that adds on top of, so our table A allocation, would increase by that much. And so we're looking at, in terms of the cost impact on once this is in place, of probably approximately a doubling of our current state water project costs, from 1 to 2 million now, from 2 to 4 million. But again, we're not committing to this expenditure right now. What we're committing to is the percentage of cost share that we want to go in at, and we would just be committing to the planning costs at this point, and we come back again once the planning process is complete, and discuss further participation, final participation, and start to pay these actual project costs. So go to the next slide. Talk about the planning costs. So like I said, it's a 4-year planning effort. And so in the first column, you have the total amount for each year and cumulative. And then on the right hand, the city share. So over 4 years, we're talking about $1 million. And these costs are for the opt-in plus, because that's so far what, as the administrator Casitas indicated, that the county would likely be in for opt-in plus. We still have the ability to choose a different option. That's just the numbers that have been run for us are based on the opt-in plus scenario. If we did the opt-in at 100%, then our total costs over the 4 years would decrease by about $135,000 over this 1 million. Next. Okay, so again, so here's the recommended actions we're talking about. Need to identify what level of participation we think we want to have in the project, and that scales how much we will owe for the planning costs. And again, we'll have a chance to come back later and, opt out again if that's the case. But we're opting in for right now is the planning costs. So then the second recommendation is, once we've identified that level of participation, to go ahead and authorize the funding agreement. So to direct the Watershed Protection District to execute that funding agreement with Department of Water Resources. And so in October 14th, Casitas Board chose the opt-in plus option. But they acknowledged that if the city and or United chose a different option, that they would need to come back and have further discussion based on those decisions. Brief discussions with United staff. They're going to consider this item in November, and they've indicated right now that they're going to recommend the opt-in at 100% versus the 100%. And that's all.
Okay, thank you. Our rules say that we're normally supposed to do a hard stop at 8, but we've gone beyond that. Just keep that in mind as we go through this item and the next couple of items. It's also the 8th inning, FYI. So, Deborah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Should I do public comment first or at the end?
That would be up to you.
Okay, let's go with the commissioners' questions and comments. Susan.
Jennifer, if I understand the math right, I mean, for example, if we said, let's do opt-in at the 100% plus today, we're committing to fund the design and development costs based on the guess at whatever it was, 15.9 billion for the total cost. Am I right in thinking that that translates into approximately the 43.5 million for approximately half of the incremental 2139 acre feet, or a cost of about 43,500 per acre feet?
No.
Good, because that sounds expensive.
I can't do math that fast.
No.
Okay, so if I
Say that one more
understand,
time.
you're asking us to make a decision on which of the 3 levels we're interested in participating in. If we go for the moment with opt-in 100% plus, which is what Casitas said they wanted to do.
Yes.
And at the moment, all we're committing to is to participate in the design and development costs. We're not committed to necessarily participating in the construction of the facility. If I read your numbers right, and on the table you present on page 3 of 5 of your administrative report, the city share of the estimated full contract cost is 43.5 million, right?
Yes.
Based on throwing darts at a dartboard at the moment. And at the moment, just above that, the assumption is at 0.55% will result in a benefit, I understand this to mean, of an incremental 2,139 acre feet of water but that's for the count, for the county?
For the county, yes.
Okay, so 2,139 at 50% is 1,000, call it 1,070 acre feet. If I take 43.5 million at 1,070 acre feet, that's a cost of over $40,000 per acre foot. What am I not understanding?
Yeah, so with it's the incremental, so it's the difference between those two. So it's just the 7.5 or 7.5 million, the difference between the 38 and the 43.5. And then the incremental is the 1,000 plus. So still expensive, but not as expensive. Okay. I should have done that math.
But what you're trying, but the point you were trying to get at in the administrative report is if we were to say we wanted to do opt out, we wouldn't even be able to assume we'd be getting our 50 to 60% annual allocation. The assumption is it drops to something like 35 to 50.
Correct.
So my point would be the way to present that from a math standpoint is to say, well, if you're gonna, if you opt out, here's how much you're paying for the hope of getting your annual allocation from state water. If you go and opt in, here's how much you might be paying versus here's how much you'd pay at opt-in plus to see whether or not there's really a benefit from choosing opt-in plus.
Right, but what we're paying right now, so because right now we're only committing to paying the planning costs, the current cost of opt-in plus is just the $135,000. So the difference between, so it's 1 million, we're at $1 million. For the total 4 years for the city just to reserve the ability to do opt-in plus. And then once the plan is completed, we could say, oh no, we just want to do regular opt-in, but we've paid our portion of the planning costs at the opt-in plus level. And that costs us $135,000. And we could still have the ability to decide between opt-in and opt-in plus at that point, whether or not that additional annual expenditure is worth it.
And so just the reason I'm pressing this point home is going back to Haley's comment that people say, why don't you just connect to state water? It's cheaper. Okay, well, as we've discussed in great detail over many times, it's not necessarily cheaper and it's not necessarily guaranteed. So my point is, if we're going to bandy about these huge, ridiculous numbers, it's helpful to put them in the context of, what might this mean to us in terms of the cost per acre foot, whether it's water we take or water that is in our allocation that we can trade with someone else. So again, just trying to keep us talking about the same vocabulary across topics. That said, I would say if all we're committing to at the moment is the design costs, it sounds to me like we should probably go with opt-in plus. And then my last question is, does that percentage possibly change if additional agencies end up opting out? Or is it for sure that, it's only 6 that have opted out and the other 18 are definitely opting in?
Yeah, so I think, yeah, I'm not sure that that'd be a question for, I can follow up with Mike Flood, but my understanding was that I don't think anyone else at this point is opting out. It's just a matter of, and so these percentages are based on what people have indicated they're going to do before their board takes action. So like I said, so right now the county's programmed in at this 0.55 level. Obviously, if we went down to 0.48, then that would leave water for someone else to take. And so yes, if people take different actions than they've indicated, that will reshuffle the deck a little bit. But my understanding is that there's no more opting out at this, that all the people that have opted out have already done so.
Thank you, Suzanne. Bob?
Yes. Mrs. Tribo, I have a question about the deadline for this decision. Am I correct that November 20th is the time by which we have to make a decision? That's my first question. I have other comments and questions, but that's the first one.
So I always sort of interpret the state water contractors deadlines as a goal versus a hard deadline, because they don't give us much time to actually get the decision making done. They would like everyone to indicate their participation by the end of November. So we're coming to you tonight. Right now this is on the city council agenda for December, and then the county would still have to take an action to do that. But I mean, that would really be a formality. So I don't, as long as we take it to council in December, I think.
All right, so I take it then there is no deadline of November 20th, but we try to get to council by December, I understand. Okay. Next question is, you mentioned that you have heard from the Casitas board. What about United?
Like I said, they haven't taken it to the board yet. I think they're going to go in November. But they did, staff indicated they were leaning towards the opt-in 100%.
Okay. Now, there was some discussion that I've heard, or some questions that under this Delta conveyance, I'm sorry, let me back up for a moment. This agreement in principle for the one tunnel was published, dated April 30th of this year. What's taken so long, if you know?
All the negotiations, I'm not sure.
Okay, all right, that's fair. Okay. My next question is, there's the comments about that, you know, we might get less water if we don't opt in, possibly. I would like to just to comment here that if you look at Roman numeral paragraph 6, it says specifically that the AIP will not modify the amounts of our table A allowances. I do read that correctly, right?
Right. So it doesn't change your entitlement, but it could change your percentage of the annual allocation.
Okay, so I understand. So what they go through is an evaluation, and they do an economic evaluation based on a professor from Berkeley, and talks about the cost in the event of an earthquake, including administrative costs at the state level, the cost if we happen to have seawater raising, and the various intangible potential costs that we might lose some of our entitlement if we do not participate. That's my comment, really not a question. So when you say, what's our benefits? We're not getting an answer from them. We don't know what our benefit is going to be. Do I understand that?
It's the increased reliability or the increased percentage delivery in that given year.
Well, okay, when you say increased reliability, you mean increased reliability should some of the cataclysmic events occur. Is that what you mean?
Well, so, the city has an entitlement, our table A allocation is 10,000 acre feet. Right? So that's our table A amount, or our entitlement. And then in a given year, the total percent allocations issued by DWR. And on average, that's been 60%. So that's what people refer to as the reliability, is that you're going to get 60% of your entitlement in a given year. Over time, however, if nothing's done, it's anticipated that percentage will reduce to somewhere between 35 and 50%. And so they'll end up being two allocations, those that participate and those that don't participate in the project. And so those that do not participate in the project, they will not pay the additional cost of the project, but they also don't get the increased reliability or annual allocation that comes with that project. So if without the project, the allocation was 50%, and with the project, the allocation is 60%, then those that opted out get 50% of their entitlement, and those that opted in get 60%.
All right, well, I'm going to make a comment on that, because what you just said is inconsistent with the AIP. And also remark that over the last 40 years, we have received 50 to 60% of our state water allocation. So what I'm understanding you to say just now was that if we don't opt in, we're toast, because we might lose something in the future. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, if we don't opt in, then we're subject to the decreased reliability and allocations of the current system. So we don't get any increased reliability or allocations from the project that is planned to be constructed.
Okay, my last question, if I might. 11 out of the 29 state contractors have opted out. So between now and the end of the year, if others opt out, what we have to pay if we opt in would go up. Is that correct?
Well, let me just, on your first comment, so the Norfolk Delta contractors they didn't really opt out. They're not getting benefits because they're north of the project. So it's really the 6 contractors that south of Delta that technically opted out. And then, yes, so these cost estimates right now in terms of our share of the planning costs are based on what contractors have indicated they will do, and obviously their boards still have to verify that. I think that's why the state water contractors would like people to make this decision by the end of November, so that they can reshuffle that a little bit and give everyone their numbers. So there could be minor changes. So like I said, and we could be one of those. We said, Casitas informed contractors that the county would definitely participate at the opt-in plus level. If we don't, and we choose to do the opt-in level or even the opt-out level, then that will reshuffle the deck. So the same thing can happen to us, but we could also be causing a reshuffling as well.
Thank you, Mrs. Trebo. Appreciate it.
Okay, Nova. Nova?
Yeah, sorry. I think my brain is fried. I think I understand the basic decision that has to be made, and I appreciate all the discussion. So I'll wait for the vote.
Thank you. Jim?
Yeah, my only question was answered now, or isn't answered till November, and that was United Water Conservation District, their level of participation.
Thank you. Susan Mulligan?
Yes, I think it's important that the city participate. One thing Jennifer talked about, the supply potentially reducing if we don't participate, because water might not be able to flow through the Delta for environmental reasons or other reasons. But another important consideration is that there could be an earthquake up in the Delta that causes levees to fail and seawater to come in. And there's about a 2/3 chance of that happening in the next 20 or 30 years. And it'll be years before water can be brought through the Delta again. It'll be salt water. And it may be that without participating in the Delta Conveyance Project, Ventura entirely loses its state project allocation. So I think it's important that the city participate. But I looked at the needs over in the Comprehensive Water Resources Plan, and the city has a 10,000 acre foot allocation, which is a lot compared to Casitas and United. And even if it gets 60% in the future, that seems to me like it's adequate for Ventura's demands, because Ventura has so many other supplies. So I would support participating at 100%. I think it's important to participate, but I don't see that the city really needs more than 60% of its allocation.
Interesting. Okay. In this time, I won't go say a lot about this. I've been working with the State Water Project for years, and Metropolitan Watershed, and we're much less than 1% participation isn't a big deal. There are agencies in this state that are spending billions and billions of dollars on this, so our whatever is really insignificant to them, and they don't care if we opt in or out. I think from the city's perspective, it's a no-brainer. That's all I'll say about that. Public comment?
We have one public speaker, Bert Handy.
Okay, Bert.
Bert, you're unmuted.
No, I had no comment. I believe I sent you an email that I was not going to comment. Thank you.
Okay, given that, I'll entertain a motion.
Suzanne, I'll move that we opt in at 100%.
I second that.
Okay, make Susan Mulligan second, and call the roll, please.
Jim Ackerman. Jim Ackerman.
There he is. Jim?
Do you copy? You copy now? Yes.
Thank you. Nova Clyde.
Yes.
Suzanne McCombs.
Yes.
Bob Accord.
Aye.
Susan Mulligan.
Yes.
Grant Burton.
Yes. Thank you all.
Aye.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm going to usurp Miles Hogan on the next one. We want to move the dates because of the holidays, and I'll entertain. Is there any public comment on this?
No.
I assume there's no comment from the commissioners. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I'll second. Call the roll, please.
I'm sorry, who was the first?
Suzanne.
Suzanne, thank you. Jim Ackerman.
Yes.
Nova Clyde.
Yes.
Suzanne McCombs.
Yes.
Bob McCord.
Yes.
Susan Mulligan.
Yes.
Grant Burton.
Yes. Public comment. There's no further public comment. Is there?
I believe Bert did want to speak.
Okay. Good.
He has left the meeting, so he's changed his mind.
Okay. Is there anything on Commissioner Communications? Nothing. General Manager report?
That's it.
Okay. We stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye. I don't fucking believe it. I don't fucking believe it.
Oops.